Okay, so we're going to paint in the background sky, but just by having the gray on, it shows me some things I can clean up a little bit before that. But I can also clean them up after I have the background. But when you see them, it's good to address them. And it's just a good discipline in art to kind of work the whole design, not to get too focused on any one detail as you go. So if there's any edges that are just obviously too crisp, like this one, I want to be sure to treat that before I lose sight of it. And that's why we do need a background color. If we only worked with that emptiness of the checkerboard, it's hard to see where those hard edges are. But the gray, it doesn't quite give us the full effect of a cloud that we need to finish it off and finish our coloring and finish our edges and feel like the wind is pulling at it from different sides. So I'm going to replace this gray now. I'm going to make a new layer on top of it. And I'm going to go to, for the first time in the class, color selectors, where we are actually going to paint in the pixels, not just make a vector shape that's filled in with a color, but actually paint in a gradation. And I have to pick two colors. And I'm going to pick kind of a pretty deep blue, but not crazy deep. Something near 50%. And basically, maybe just a little bit brighter than 50% gray. So maybe that color. And these can be adjusted later. And then I'm going to pick the lighter color. So I click in the color picker, and I'm going to pick something, maybe something like this. A little bit lighter, maybe not quite so colorful. Okay, it's going to look a little weird, but let's see. And now, instead of just the paint bucket, if I just use the paint bucket and I fill in the layer, it will fill it in with one color, right? That looks a little purple, so let me change that one up. I can change the hue here. So maybe to about there. Okay. So the paint bucket just fills in with one flat color. We want the gradient tool, which is stuck with the paint bucket on the toolbox. And we want to choose the gradient to be the first kind of default gradient. We want it to be linear, which is the first one in the options here. We want normal mode. We want 100% opacity. And what we're going to do is work dark to light. Actually, reverse that. No, actually I do want dark to light. And I'm going to start outside of my frame and end outside of my frame at a slight angle, like so. And that will gradate a sky for me. And I can try more severe angles. You want it to kind of match the lighting on your clouds. Now for those of you who want even more complex skies, you can go into the gradient tool by just clicking on it, and then you can actually add colors in. So you're not only stuck with gradating between two colors. So for instance, I can add that new kind of grayish color, and I can play with it. I can also play with the opacity of individual ends. So if I want kind of the gray of the background to come through a little bit from that color, I'll just take its opacity down to, like, let's say 60. And then when I paint, it will look a little different. It looks a little more subtle, and a lot of that gray comes through. And if I want to extend the colors, I just paint well beyond the edges of my frame. Keep it nice and subtle. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so I've got my painted in sky. Now that I have that as a layer, and I might label that as my sky layer. And I love this new trick of color coding. So I'll make that blue. Very nice. So I'm going to be color coding my main components. the clone stamping, the sky, and then I can always play with its opacity against the gray and kind of tone that sky down a little bit, which might be nice. I'm going to mess with my gradient a little bit to shift where the lights and darks are and try this, and I'll repaint it. Extend it nice and long. There we go. Or if I like the bottom end more, I only extend it at the top. There's all kinds of little tricks. So playing with gradations is lots of fun. Gives you subtlety, depends what direction you paint. And you can make multiple passes at it. And then kind of blend them together. So I have two now that look pretty different. One that's bottom heavy, one that's top heavy, and I can blend them in with each other using different opacities. I might rotate the angle of this one, flip it horizontally. There we go. So now this is a believably complex sky. Now with the sky painted in, I'm going to go back to clone stamp. And I can work on some of these harder edges, and especially on things like the beak. Now I'm going to merge all of these together, all the sky with my gray background, by holding down Shift, selecting all layers, and then hitting Command E. So now I have one background layer. Because when I use clone stamp, I don't want to have that background layer on. Now for this beak, I need to find an edge I can use that's more believable than just the eraser. So I might clone stamp it from right here. And again, kind of dotting with it to give me a crisper edge. And you can always move your selection. And then the bottom of it, maybe from here. And maybe the tip, like just like this. Okay, and then to get that color, bridge it in just like we merged the textures in our creature. Kind of bring those colors and textures together, but letting that edge be a little bit stronger. Now let's see what that looks like with the background. And that's looking better. Now the foot needs some work. And I can always erase away, but clone stamping is a better approach to getting believable edges. But you just want to turn off your background first. And I'm going to turn on my outline to kind of see what that is. Actually, I need less of a leg, not more. So maybe erasing is a good first step. Let's see how that comes across. A little better, perhaps. I need the bottom edge of a cloud that I can clone stamp. So maybe this one right here. Target it, and I'm going to use it at this claw, which feels very weak at the moment. And then something kind of talon-like, maybe right here. Again, it's all about edges. Now, using clone stamp a lot, and later, especially when we use the smudge tool, it's going to take up a lot of memory. So you want to save every once in a while. Make sure you have it as assignment 4. You don't want to overwrite another assignment. And I like how this is suggesting a bird now. And so now we're just going to do the finishing touches. So this is what we do. We turn off the sky. We turn off the clone stamp layer. We turn off our outline kind of guideline layer. We click the layer right above clone stamp or right below clone stamp, and we hold down Option and say Layer Merge Visible, and that will combine all of our clouds onto one layer underneath clone stamp. Let's put together. And now I can just work with that as one layer. And I have my clone stamping on top of that. But I'm going to turn that off for the moment, and I'm going to use eraser, and I'm going to clean up this little debris that's everywhere. I might even decide I need to do a refined edge, where I just kind of soften all the edges evenly. So that would look like this. Using the magic wand, shifting the edge in a little bit and feathering it. Just to bite away from everything a tiny bit, and then delete to soften those edges. So what does that look like? Softened like that versus sharper like that. Yeah, I think I was too severe. So I'm going to do refine edge again, but I'm going to not make it such an abrupt shift. I feather it much more. Like so. And so it will select the outside space with a very soft gradient when it deletes. Just like when we cut out the edges around our creature. It does take a while to process. And all this gives me is a selection. So I can just hit delete, or I can just use my eraser at a low opacity and just take it down a little bit around the edges. Because clouds have fairly transparent edges. And that will help it be a lot more believable.